God is using your current silence to build your greatest spiritual strength. There is a secret power hidden within the loneliness you are feeling today. Right now, you might feel as though you are standing in an empty room, crying out to the heavens and hearing nothing but the hollow echo of your own voice. You may feel forgotten, sidelined, or bypassed by the blessings you see being poured out on everyone else. You have prayed, you have waited, and yet the stillness remains. But what if the very thing you are desperately trying to escape is the exact environment required for your elevation? We live in a paradigm that equates noise with progress. The world demands a constant, unrelenting stream of sound. Our culture is profoundly addicted to the immediate gratification of notifications, instant replies, and the intoxicating illusion of perpetual connectivity. We are conditioned to believe that if we are not talking, moving, or producing visible results, we are stagnating. Society has taught us to fear the quiet, equating silence with absence and isolation with rejection. But the divine operates on a fundamentally different frequency. While the world is screaming for your attention and demanding your participation in its chaos, God is using this specific silence to build a spiritual fortification within your soul that no earthly storm can shake. He's not ignoring you, He is insulating you. You must understand this truth down to your very core. The isolation you currently fear is, in reality, the precise preparation you have been praying for. To step into the fullness of what you are called to be, we must first strip away the noise. We must bravely confront the sacred stillness where true, unshakable divine character is forged. It is time to reframe your current season. This is not a season of abandonment. You have not been left to wither in a barren wasteland. Instead, you have been placed into a heavy-duty spiritual kiln. A kiln is a place of intense, concentrated heat, enclosed and deliberately cut off from the outside world. To the untrained eye, the dark interior of a kiln looks like a tomb. But to the master artisan, it is the only environment where soft, malleable clay can be permanently transformed into a durable, unbreakable vessel. The heat does not destroy, it solidifies. By examining the quietude of the desert, the same historical wilderness that shaped the greatest leaders, prophets, and visionaries, we reveal a profound pattern. God intentionally uses the absence of external validation to harden our resolve. When the voices of the crowd are muted, He sharpens our discernment, tuning our spiritual ears to catch the subtle, life-saving frequencies of truth that are entirely drowned out in the modern uproar. You have prayed for a magnificent harvest. You have asked for greater responsibility, deeper peace, and a more profound purpose. But a massive harvest will utterly crush a weak foundation. The heavy silence you are enduring right now is simply the sound of divine construction. God is excavating your soul, digging deep into the bedrock of your character, ensuring that when the time comes, you possess the spiritual strength required to carry the monumental weight of your coming blessing. Welcome to the sacred silence. Your transformation has already begun. The deception of the void. When the heavens seem to turn to brass and your most fervent prayers are met with an echoing quiet, the immediate human reaction is panic. We look around at the vast, quiet expanse of our current circumstances and we label it the void. This perceived emptiness feels unnatural. It feels like a punishment. But the void is a master of deception. What looks like a barren wasteland is actually the fertile soil of your imminent growth. The anxiety of the unanswered prayer. To understand why this silence feels so agonizing, we must first confront the cultural anxiety that defines our era. We are living in an age characterized by the tyranny of the immediate. We have constructed a society where instant gratification is not just preferred, it is expected. If a text message is ignored for an hour, we assume an offense. If an order is delayed by a day, we demand a refund. We have become utterly reliant on a continuous loop of rapid-fire feedback. Tragically, we have projected this digital impatience onto an eternal God. When we pray, we expect God to operate like a search engine. We input our requests and expect a neatly formatted answer to materialize in a fraction of a second. When the answer does not come, or when the circumstances remain stubbornly unchanged, spiritual vertigo sets in. The cultural narrative whispers a toxic lie. If God is silent, He is absent. If your prayers are unanswered, you have been rejected. This anxiety drives us to frantic action. We try to force doors open, manipulate outcomes, and create our own noise just to assure ourselves that we are still alive and moving. We assume that a lack of divine noise equates to a lack of divine love. The addiction to feedback versus strategic isolation. We must forcefully correct this misconception. Our modern addiction to constant feedback is profoundly incompatible with the rhythm of deep spiritual formation. We measure our progress by how loudly the world acknowledges us through metrics, applause, and visible success. But look at the biblical pattern. The divine does not follow the algorithms of modern society. He follows the rhythms of agriculture and architecture. And the greatest works of both require seasons of absolute, uninterrupted stillness. Consider the historical pattern of strategic isolation. When God prepares a leader, He does not place them on a stage, He pulls them into the shadows. Moses spent 40 years in the silent deserts of Midian before he was trusted to face Pharaoh. David was anointed king, only to be sent back to the isolated hills to tend sheep and later hide in silent caves. Paul did not immediately begin his ministry after his revelation. He spent years in the quiet isolation of Arabia. In every instance, the isolation was not an accident, nor was it a divine oversight. It was a tactical withdrawal. God routinely pulls His most valuable assets off the front lines of the world to train them in the dark. The modern world views isolation as a prison sentence. The Creator uses it as a strategic training ground, an invitation to higher ground. The deception of the void lies in its appearance of emptiness. Because you cannot see the activity, you assume there is no activity. Because you cannot hear the voice, you assume there is no presence. It is time to reframe the silence. This quietude is not a sign of God's rejection. It is a purposeful, urgent invitation to higher ground. When God goes silent, He is doing something incredibly profound. He is weaning you off your dependency on external signs, emotional highs, and constant reassurances. He is breaking your addiction to the noise of His blessing so that you can fall in love with the quiet of His character. The spiritual reality is this. If your faith requires a constant stream of miracles, visible progress, and verbal confirmation to survive, your faith is fragile. God loves you too much to leave you with a fragile spirit in a brutal world. By withdrawing the immediate feedback, He forces your roots to grow deeper, searching for living water below the surface-level emotions. He is calling you out of the crowded, noisy valleys where everyone else is panicking and inviting you up the mountain into the thin, quiet air of unshakable trust. The void is not empty. It is deliberately cleared space. God has silenced the competing voices, the distractions, and even the immediate answers, so that when He finally speaks, His voice will be the only one you recognize. You are not being buried in the dark, you are being planted. The kiln of character. If the void is the clearing of the landscape, the kiln is the fire that reshapes the earth. When you first enter a season of divine silence, the initial shock is the absence of noise. But as the season progresses, a new sensation takes over, the rising temperature. You begin to feel an intense, inescapable internal friction. This is the moment you transition from the waiting room into the kiln. God is no longer simply holding you in isolation. He is actively turning up the heat. The spiritual pressure cooker. A kiln is a specialized oven engineered to reach temperatures that would incinerate ordinary objects. But for clay, this extreme heat is the only pathway to permanence. In its raw state, clay is soft, easily molded, and highly vulnerable to water and pressure. If you try to use unbaked clay to hold anything of value, it will dissolve and collapse under the weight. Your isolation is a spiritual pressure cooker designed to fundamentally alter your composition. When you're surrounded by people, busy with tasks and constantly engaged in the world, you have an infinite number of escape valves to relieve internal pressure. If you feel anxious, you can scroll through your phone. If you feel insecure, you can seek out a compliment. If you feel empty, you can buy something new. But in the deep silence of isolation, God seals off those escape valves. You are left alone with your thoughts, your insecurities, your unhealed wounds, and your rawest motives. The heat you're experiencing is the friction between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. God traps you in this quiet pressure cooker because it forces your deepest, most hidden flaws to rise to the surface. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge, and you will never acknowledge your internal fractures as long as the noise of the world is drowning them out. The heat of this season is not a punishment for your past. It is a profound act of grace meant to fortify your internal resolve for the future. The agony of the stripping process. To build a character that cannot be compromised, God must first dismantle the counterfeit identities you have constructed. This is the agonizing process of the stripping away. From a young age, we build scaffolding around our egos. We construct our identities out of external validations, our job titles, our relationship statuses, our bank accounts, the approval of our peers, and our reputations. We mistake the scaffolding for the actual building. When God places you in the silent kiln, the first thing he does is set fire to the scaffolding. Suddenly, the applause stops, the phone stops ringing, the people you thought would be there disappear, the opportunities you relied on dry up. This feels like a devastating loss, and it is entirely normal to grieve it. But you must recognize what is actually happening. God is systematically removing every external crutch you lean on. He is starving your ego to feed your spirit. When every external source of validation is stripped away, you are forced to answer the most terrifying and liberating question of your life. Who am I when no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no one is paying attention? This stripping process is painful because it reveals the naked, vulnerable core of your identity. But it is only in this stripped-down state that you can finally see what God sees. He is removing the fragile layers of people-pleasing pride and performance so that you can discover an identity anchored not in what you do or what people say about you, but in who He created you to be. You are losing your camouflage, but you are finding your true face. Hardening the spirit in quietude. There is a massive difference between a hardened heart and a hardened spirit. The world hardens your heart, making you cynical, bitter, and closed off from love. But the silent kiln hardens your spirit, making you resilient, unwavering, and immune to manipulation. A hardened spirit requires a very specific environment to form absolute, unadulterated quietude. Worldly distractions keep us malleable. When we are constantly bombarded by the opinions, trends, and outrage of the culture, we are continually reshaped by the hands of society. We compromise our values to fit in. We bend our convictions to avoid conflict. We remain soft. But inside the stillness where worldly distractions are muted and the only constant is the presence of the divine, a chemical change occurs within your soul. Because you are no longer bending to the shifting winds of culture, your core values begin to solidify. Your moral spine stiffens. You learn to stand entirely alone, supported by nothing but your faith. This is the ultimate purpose of the kiln. God is curing you. He is taking the soft, easily influenced clay of your earthly nature and firing it in the heat of isolation until it turns into a vessel of iron. When you finally emerge from this silence, the world will not recognize you. They will try to mold you as they did before, but they will find that you no longer yield. You will have been permanently hardened against the fear of man, forged in the quiet into a vessel capable of holding the tremendous weight of divine purpose. The gift of divine discernment. As the kiln solidifies your character, the quietude begins to perform a second, equally miraculous operation. It sharpens your spiritual senses. Once the internal infrastructure of your soul has been fortified, God shifts his focus to your external perception. Internal strength without external vision is simply armor in the dark. You are not just being hardened to survive the isolation, you're being trained to navigate the complexities of the world once you leave it. This training requires the cultivation of the most vital yet rarest spiritual asset in the modern era, divine discernment. Sensory enhancement through desert deprivation. In the physical realm, if you plunge a person into complete darkness, their pupils will dilate, desperately searching for any available light. Over time, their hearing will become acute, their sense of touch more sensitive. The deprivation of one sense forces the enhancement of the others to ensure survival. The spiritual desert functions on the exact same principle. When God abruptly turns off the glaring neon lights of worldly distraction and mutes the cacophony of cultural opinion, your spiritual senses are thrust into a state of temporary shock. At first you feel blind and deaf. But as you remain in the quiet, an incredible adaptation occurs. Because you are no longer overwhelmed by the loud, aggressive demands of your environment, your spiritual ears begin to recalibrate. You start to pick up on frequencies you were previously deaf to. The desert acts as an acoustic chamber, absorbing the useless noise of the world so that the pure, unadulterated signals of the divine can finally be received. You move from merely reacting to the world's chaos to accurately perceiving the spiritual realities operating beneath the surface. Mastering the still, small voice. One of the great paradoxes of the divine is that the creator of the universe, the one who spoke galaxies into existence with a voice like roaring waters, most frequently chooses to communicate with his people in a whisper. There is a profound theological truth hidden in the biblical account of the prophet Elijah standing on the mountain. He looked for God in the devastating wind, the earthquake, and the raging fire. But God was not in the chaos. Instead, the presence of the divine arrived in a still, small voice, a gentle whisper. Why would the Almighty whisper? When someone shouts at you, you can hear them from across the room. You can continue scrolling on your phone, working on your tasks, and remaining entirely distracted while still registering their volume. A shout requires no intimacy, but a whisper changes the dynamics of the relationship. To hear a whisper, you must stop what you are doing. You must silence your own mouth. You must lean in closely, closing the physical distance between you and the speaker, and give them your absolute, undivided attention. God does not whisper because he is weak. He whispers to force you into proximity. The ability to hear this still, small voice is not a mystical gift bestowed at random. It is a highly specialized skill developed strictly through a lack of competing noise. In your current season of silence, God is training your ear. He is teaching you to recognize the subtle nudges, the quiet convictions, and the gentle directions of his spirit. He has isolated you so that you can memorize the exact cadence of his voice, ensuring that when you are thrust back into the noisy crowds, you will never mistake the roar of the world for the whisper of your Creator. Navigating the moral fog. This newfound clarity is not merely for your personal comfort, it is a tactical necessity for the era we are living in. We exist in a deeply complex moral landscape. The current culture is saturated with deception, half-truths, and beautifully packaged lies. We are constantly bombarded by ideologies that sound compassionate but are fundamentally destructive, and movements that promise liberation but deliver bondage. The lines between truth and manipulation have been intentionally blurred, creating a dense moral fog. How do you survive, let alone lead, in such an environment? You cannot rely on human intellect alone. The deception is too sophisticated. You need divine discernment. Discernment is not simply the ability to tell the difference between right and wrong. Even a novice can do that. True discernment is the ability to tell the difference between what is right and what is almost right. It is the spiritual intuition that detects a drop of poison in a glass of pure water. God is using your current silence to sharpen this exact weapon. Because you've spent time in the quiet, detached from the frantic outrage and emotional manipulation of the culture, you are developing an immunity to deception. You are learning to see situations, opportunities, and even people through the lens of divine truth rather than human emotion. When you emerge from this desert, you will not be easily swayed by the latest trends or panicked by the latest crisis. While others are running blindly into the fog, reacting to every shadow, you will possess a quiet, unshakable clarity. You will know exactly when to step forward, when to hold your ground, and when to walk away, guided perfectly by the whisper you learn to hear in the dark. Architecting your future harvest. There is a profound shift that must occur in your mindset before you can successfully exit the season of isolation. Up until this point, the focus of the silence has been entirely internal, stripping away the false self, hardening your spiritual core, and sharpening your divine discernment. But the desert is not your final destination, it is a gateway. Once the internal work is secured, the purpose of the silence pivots outward. You are no longer just being healed, you are being equipped. The quietude transforms from a place of spiritual surgery into a construction site. God is using this uninterrupted time to help you architect the exact future you have been praying for, from passive waiting to active preparation. The greatest misconception about a season of silence is that it requires passive waiting. We imagine ourselves sitting in a cosmic waiting room, flipping through old magazines, doing absolutely nothing until God finally calls our name. This is a dangerous lie that breeds resentment and stagnation. In the divine economy, waiting is an action verb. It is a highly active state of preparation. When a theater goes completely dark, the audience assumes nothing is happening. But behind the heavy curtain, in the absolute pitch black, the stagehands are moving frantically. They are changing the set, adjusting the lighting, moving props, and setting the actors in their new marks. The darkness is not a sign that the show is over. It is the absolute prerequisite for the next act to begin. Right now, your life may feel like a dark stage, but this is not the time to fall asleep. This is the time to actively prepare for the responsibilities that follow the silence. If you are praying for a massive harvest, you must spend your silent season digging the trenches to hold the water. This means engaging in the unglamorous, unseen work. It means reading the books, studying the craft, breaking bad financial habits, going to therapy to heal your trauma, and establishing a ruthless daily discipline. You cannot wait for the door to open before you start looking for the key. God will not entrust a public platform to someone who has not mastered private preparation. Building the infrastructure of blessing. Consider the architecture of a skyscraper. Before a single beam of steel is erected into the sky, construction crews spend months, sometimes years, digging downward. They blast through bedrock, pouring thousands of tons of concrete into a massive hidden foundation. The taller the building is destined to be, the deeper and wider the foundation must go. You have asked God for a skyscraper-level blessing. You have asked for generational wealth, a profoundly impactful ministry, a lasting marriage, or a position of significant leadership. But here is the hard truth. Your current spiritual and mental infrastructure cannot support the weight of that request. If God were to drop that massive blessing onto the shallow foundation of your current emotional maturity, lack of discipline, or unhealed insecurities, the structure would instantly collapse. God is using this season of isolation to aggressively upgrade your internal infrastructure. He is expanding your capacity. In the quiet, He is teaching you how to manage a little so that you do not squander a lot. He is forcing you to confront your triggers, your temper, and your pride, ensuring that when you are placed in a position of power, you do not abuse the people under your care. The silence is necessary because heavy construction requires a closed site. God has fenced off your life to pour the concrete of character, resilience, and wisdom deep into your soul. The danger of a premature harvest. We cry out against the delay, begging for the season of hiddenness to end. But we rarely consider the devastating danger of a premature harvest. Look closely at the world around you, and you will see the wreckage of people who received a massive harvest before they possessed the character to manage it. You see lottery winners who go bankrupt within 5 years. You see young prodigies and sudden celebrities who completely self-destruct under the crushing pressure of fame. You see leaders who ascend to power only to be unmasked in public scandals. A blessing received before you are ready for it will always mutate into a curse. The weight of the harvest will crush the harvester if they have not been trained to carry it. This is why God is fiercely protecting you right now. The silence is not a penalty, it is a divine safeguard. He is intentionally holding back the blessing because He loves you too much to let it destroy you. He knows that the anointing, the influence, and the resources you are destined to carry come with intense spiritual warfare, heavy public scrutiny, and massive emotional demands. When you understand this, the frustration of the void begins to dissolve into profound gratitude. You realize that God is not making you wait. He is giving you the time you need to become the person who can sustain the miracle. The quietude is the final step in architecting your readiness. You are not missing out on your harvest. You are simply building the barns large enough to store it, emerging from the stillness. Every season has an expiration date, and your season of silence is no exception. The divine kiln was never intended to be your permanent residence. It was a temporary processing center. As the intense heat of preparation finishes its work, the spiritual atmosphere around you will begin to change. The heavy, isolating doors are preparing to unlock. But emerging from the stillness requires just as much spiritual maturity as surviving it. You must learn to recognize the subtle shift in the winds, step into the light without losing your newfound vision, and leverage the authority you forged in the dark to impact a desperate world. The hallmarks of readiness. How do you know when the season of isolation is ending? We often expect the transition to be announced by a sudden, explosive external event, a massive opportunity dropping into our laps, or a sudden chorus of public validation. But in the divine order, external shifts are always preceded by internal settling. God will not open the door until He sees that you no longer need the door to be open to feel secure. The most profound sign that your silent season is shifting toward visible action is the death of your desperation. When you first entered the void, you lightly fought it. You clawed at the walls, begged for an exit, and constantly checked the clock. But as the kiln did its work, a profound surrender took place. You will know you are ready to emerge when you find absolute, unshakable peace within the silence. You no longer need the noise to feel valued. You are no longer frantic for the harvest. Your desires have been purified. You no longer seek the blessing to inflate your ego, but strictly to fulfill your purpose. Paradoxically, the exact moment you become entirely content with being hidden in the shadow of the Creator is the exact moment He decides you are safe to be displayed to the world. Other signs of this shift include a sudden alignment of circumstances that require no manipulation on your part. Doors that you previously battered against to no avail will begin to swing open effortlessly. The people and resources required for your next phase will naturally gravitate toward you, drawn not by your frantic networking, but by the quiet gravitational pull of your newly solidified character, stepping out with forged authority. The person who walks out of the desert is fundamentally different from the person who walked in. You entered as raw, malleable material, overly sensitive to the opinions of the crowd and easily derailed by the storms of life. You are emerging as a vessel of iron. As you step back into the visible arena, you must actively lay claim to the renewed sense of authority forged in those private hours with your Creator. This is not the loud, arrogant, chest-beating authority of the world. Worldly authority demands to be seen and heard. It relies on volume, manipulation, and force. True spiritual authority is quiet. It is the steady, grounded presence of someone who has survived the dark, wrestled with their deepest flaws, and encountered the living God in the absolute stillness. You no longer have to perform for the people because you have already been approved by the divine. When you re-enter the noisy, chaotic culture, you will notice a miraculous change. The things that used to trigger your anxiety will bounce off your hardened spirit. The criticisms that used to devastate you will sound like distant, meaningless chatter. Because you learn to hear the still, small voice in the void, you will navigate complex situations with surgical precision. Do not shrink back to fit into the spaces you have outgrown. Step boldly into the light, carrying the immense weight of the glory and grit you developed in the shadows. Becoming the guide in the void. Ultimately, the supreme purpose of your isolation was never solely about you. You were placed in the kiln, stripped of your comforts, and forced to build an unbreakable infrastructure so that you could become a lifeline for others. We are living in an era of profound spiritual and emotional crisis. Every day, thousands of people are abruptly thrust into their own seasons of silence. They lose their jobs, their relationships shatter, their plans dissolve, and their prayers seem to hit a brass ceiling. When this happens, they panic. They believe they are being buried. They believe God has abandoned them. They are wandering into the exact same desert you just survived, and they are terrified. You are now the veteran of the silence. You have been positioned to lead others through their own silent seasons with newfound wisdom. When you see someone breaking under the pressure of their isolation, you could look them in the eye and speak with the undeniable authority of someone who has been there. You can tell them the truth. This is not a tomb, it is a kiln. The void is not empty, it is cleared space. You are not being abandoned, you are being strategically hidden. You will become the bridge for others, helping them transition from panicked waiting to purposeful preparation. Your survived isolation becomes their survival manual, the masterpiece revealed. As we conclude this journey, look back at the landscape of your silence. Strip away the cultural anxiety and the addiction to constant noise, and view this season through the eyes of the master artisan. The loneliness was actually insulation. The perceived void was a canvas. The agonizing heat was the seal of permanence. God used the silence to architect your greatest spiritual strength. He took the fragile clay of your life, pulled you away from the chaotic hands of the world, and held you in the quiet until you were fully formed. You are ready now. The infrastructure is built. The discernment is sharp. The character is set. Walk out of the stillness. The harvest is waiting, and for the first time in your life, you are strong enough to carry it.